Okay, Travis Wayne Goodsell. I hope you realized from the last video, 15, part 15 I believe this is part 16, that there's a big difference between reading what other people tell you to believe in and doing the actual research yourself. I gave you an example of how I do my research. Just because Jeremy said that the current edition has been changed from the original 1830 and the changes for the Trinitarian God were such and such, I didn't readily believe him because I knew the Book of Mormon had different editions, and so I needed to know which edition was the change made. I'm not just going to say, oh, the church changed it. And so I pulled out my reference book for the sole purpose of finding out if they had done the research to do the answer, and no, they didn't. They used a 1964 edition of the Book of Mormon. And so I had to keep searching. So Googled editions of the Book of Mormon and found Klingon Skousen's son, Cleon Skousen, did those just unbelievable. The first and second 2,000 years, the third 1,000 years, the 4,000 years, the 5,000 years, that whole series. Oh my God. I couldn't, even as a teenager, when I saw that in my parents' library, and I'm pulling it off the shelves to check it out, oh, this is kind of cool. It's going over the first 2,000 years of history. Wow. I knew as a teenager that it was crap. And then, of course, then my mom, oh yeah, it's great resource, great information there that adds light and understanding to the Bible. Oh my God, Mom, are you kidding? And so, yeah. But at least Royal did something of value, even though he couldn't confirm that Gerald and Sandra Tanner had a 1964 edition of the Book of Mormon. So one of them are wrong, if not both of them. But that's how you do your research. You don't trust authors. So the next thing I would need to do in my research to establish when the changes were made is to search for a PDF version of each and every single Book of Mormon that are in existence and find the earliest edition that makes the change. That's how you do it. But it was clear from Royal that it wasn't Joseph Smith. So that is very interesting. But yeah, that I understand why Joseph was doing what he was doing. But the fact that grammar, because the Gerald and Sandra Tanner were talking about how was and were changed. It was in the was, as in current present tense, and the changes turned it into past tense, were. Don't mess with the Book of Mormon. It's coded for a reason. Alright. Book of Mormon translation concerns. Alright. What's going on here? Okay, you quote from Fair Moment podcast by the rough stone rolling Bushman guy. No. See, I can tell you right now, translation, Book of Mormon was not translated from Egyptian. It was coded using the understanding of Egyptian, of the Knights Templar that passed on into the Yorkites. And so any Egyptian would have been that which had been revealed with the discovery of the Rosetta Stone and the decipherment of the Rosetta Stone in 1822, I think was the date. Jean Champollion. And so, yeah, they had time to know about it and put it in the Book of Mormon. As Nephi says, learning of the Jews, language of the Egyptians, instead of learning of the Greeks, language of the Egyptians. Where they got it from. Peepstone, Ouija board, treasure hunting. Okay. Oh yeah, this is the rock in a hat for translating. No, it was rocks, dude. 2 Urim and Thummim. 2 rocks. 2 rocks. Because of my research in Paleo-Hebrew, I was able to get my home teachers to get me something on their little retirement vacation out in the Pacific, and they got me rocks. One's pink, one's blue. Specifically, I selected those 2 out of the bag of rocks that they gave me. And the reason why is because in Paleo-Hebrew, these are the rocks. And just look at Peter, when Jesus says, "Upon this rock I will build my church." And then the author says, in Aramaic it's no, it's Egyptian. Jesus gave him an Egyptian name, which is seer stone. Well, it's seer, but seer stones. Alright. Let's see. I call it peepstone. But, so it looks like your question here has to do with the hat. Yeah, that's what it's all about. To lay in the groundwork. So, okay. Since you're not going to ask a question for me to answer, I get to tell you church history. New Israelites. Remember when I talked about them? Smith Sr. and William Cowdery attended that congregation. The Smiths would have to do a whole vacation trip to attend the meetings because they were up in Sharon. And so they were Congregationalists with the Cowderys, but because of the distance that the Smiths had to travel, they weren't too up on attending church. The naming of the kids, when they named their kids, key. Hiram was in 1800 when New Israelites were up and running, and that's where Jewish mysticism was being taught. Hiram, however, is Freemason. It was not spelled as it's currently spelled. According to court documents, in 1838, for example, when Hiram was arrested as well, it was spelled as his birth certificate, Hiram, just like Hiram Abiff. And so you see that Smith Sr. was influenced to Freemasonry in Vermont in 1800. Then you have William, naming has as importance as to when. Alvin, for example, is a Norse dwarven elf meaning, something like that. Yeah, big difference, and you can see when Joseph Smith Sr. Joined the Freemasons, or was attending meetings of the Freemasons. But the New Israelites were a variation of the Congregationalists, and the Cowdreys, being down there by Poultry in Vermont, were going to the Congregationalist church there. And so when the Nathan guy, forgot to look it up to explain what his last name is, Wood, Nathan Wood, that's the Wood Scrape. When he came into town, I started up a New Israelites, which was Congregationalist in religious doctrine, with some minor differences, polygamy being one of them. But you had to be a member in order to commence polygamy. And Joseph and William never became members. They never qualified. Smith, we can understand why, because he'd have to travel down to attend the meetings. Whereas William would have, could have, didn't. They instead, Justice Winchell, when Justice Winchell joined the New Israelites, right around 1800 when Hiram was born, he introduced a whole bunch of other nifty little tricks to add to the religion of Hebrew being the angelic tongue, and Jewish mysticism being practiced, and astrology being practiced, ancient astrology, Jewish mystical astrology, rather than the current New Orleans astrology, or the newspaper astrology. Justice Winchell taught them divining. That's where the rods come in. So get your metal coat hangers, unfold them, and put them into an L shape, and hold the smaller end in each hand lightly. Don't grip them. Just set them there so that it lays on top, and that it's loose, but it's in your hands. It's not going to get out. And then walk with them straight. Walk around your house, and then walk over your toilet. A fun, exciting thing happens. The metal rods cross. So cool. And it's a fun trick for kids. I did that as a kid myself. And so they did that for the purpose of finding treasure, as if having a certain type of rod would be able to locate treasure. Joseph Sr. was considered a master rodsman, great rodsman or whatever, and so he had been participating when Justice Winchell showed up. He was more interested in the divining and counterfeiting. Counterfeiting is where you counterfeit something for the purpose of selling it as authentic. And so, what's with the Book of Mormon? Well, you have to write it out on paper with the quill ink pen, and then you have to get somebody who knows how to make copper plates that are about 6 by 8, something like that, and transfer the manuscript words onto these copper plates. And it's got to be done in a certain way, which requires special glasses, Urim and Thummim, to put the writing on the copper plates, and then to read them when you transfer the information from the copper plates onto the printer's printer back then. And a counterfeiter would know how to do that very well. That education would serve well in that process. And so Oliver Cowdery is known for doing that because Joseph Smith says so in the Doctrine and Covenants. And instead of the rod of Aaron, or the gift of Aaron, I think it was changed. Don't change Joseph Smith's words. He knows what he's saying. But that's what they're referring to. Is the teachings of Justice Winchell, who joined the New Israelites there in Vermont. And so Joseph Smith, therefore, taught his son Joseph Jr. about rocks in a hat, to pretend to find stuff. Just little kids' games. Joseph Smith Sr. never really practiced it, even though he was good at divining, but after the wood scrape incident, no more. You don't hear him doing any of that type of stuff, other than family outings before Joseph Jr. joined Stoll. They tried their luck with it, practicing. But Joseph Jr. went and worked for Martin Harris and showed Martin Harris the hat trick, and that's why Martin Harris is the only account of the hat trick for the Book of Mormon, is because Joseph already knew Martin Harris, and they needed a cover story to solidify actual ancient plates that were found, and a method of translating as well. And so when you read your Book of Mormon, you come across the word Gazelem, and it's talking about seer stones, you'll know it's talking about Joseph Smith. And it can't be in the past tense, it must be in the present tense. And Alma, if you don't have a computer programmed, I think it's in the index. You should be able to find Gazelem in the index. Or under seer stones, maybe. I don't know. I don't use indexes. So, yeah, that's where it comes from. Joseph Smith had nothing to do with the Book of Mormon. He was the distraction so that Smith Sr. could work on the copper plates as they transferred Oliver Cowdery's transcripts from William Morgan, and because Oliver Cowdery was the one who had the job doing that. So he did it with William Morgan, and then did it for Sidney Rigdon. And so Joseph Smith Sr. helped on the Cooper Smith shop, where they needed copper for the bands around the barrels for gunpowder. You don't use metal with gunpowder. You use copper instead. So apparently I've seen an advertisement for a copper pot. It's been a year now since I've seen that commercial. But copper gloves are available for typing on the computer as well. If your hands get deathly cold from just typing, it's a strange phenomenon, but copper is supposed to help with that. So that's the hat trick.